At 11 o'clock this morning, workers in Edmonton and Calgary answered a call from their labor councils for a general strike. In Edmonton, 2,500 people are out, and it looks like a fair portion are here today in Market Square. Some of them say they're striking in sympathy with Winnipeg workers. They've shut down their city for over 10 days now. Others say this has been building for a long time. They have their own reasons for this strike.
I'm a nurse. I was born in Peace River, then trained at the Lamont Hospital. The Army recruited me right from there to serve in France. Since I've returned, I'm working here in Edmonton with people suffering from the Spanish flu.
As the war wound down, Prime Minister Robert Borden's coalition government faced growing labor unrest. The recent Russian Revolution had them worried. So, Borden sent Canadian soldiers to Siberia to fight against the Soviet Army. The troops left from Halifax, heading to Vancouver, the departure point for Russia. Traveling with the soldiers was the Spanish flu. As the train moved across the country, it had to stop several times to remove the sick and dying.
The flu starts with red spots, then darkens to blue and finally black. The black begins at your extremities, the fingers and toes, and spreads up your legs and arms to your body. As long as you're conscious, you watch death enter at your fingertips and fill you up.
The Siberian Expeditionary Force was top secret, so it was 3 o'clock in the morning when the train dropped off one officer and 14 men, all sick with the Spanish flu. These were Alberta's first cases.
I visit people with the Spanish flu in their homes to do a preliminary assessment, whether they should stay or go to the hospital. In North Edmonton, one woman says to me, "We're never more than 3 days from starvation." And these are all people who are working. Homes here have no ventilation, no coal to burn, no baths, no water at all. Well, you couldn't ask for better conditions to spread the flu. When I do try and get people to go to the hospital, they don't want to go. It simply costs too much. Last month, I had the case of a veteran. His 12-year-old boy had taken ill. The ambulance driver told him that before they'd take the child out of the house, the man would have to produce $3. When the little boy got to the hospital, the first thing they asked was, "How are you going to pay for this?" Well, the veteran was honest. He said, "I don't know. I don't have a job yet." So the child was classed indigent and left in the public ward. Now, I've worked there. Beds so close you can't move between them, and you're lucky if you ever get to see a doctor. They're too busy making their big fees in the private rooms. And this veteran, he served his country. He's come back from the war shell-shocked and a nervous wreck. Now he's worried sick for fear of a hospital bill. Just last week, I came to a 10 by 12-foot shack with just the one tiny window. The family of 6 were all ill, and they were lying in their single, damp, and unclean bed. That same bed where their mother and her infant had just died.
Over on the other side of Market Square is a group of workers sharing some food together.
I don't know if I can speak. For a simple reason. I am not speaking good English.
I prefer you not use my name, huh? I need to keep my job.
The federal government raised the head tax on all persons of Chinese origin to $500.
I come to Canada when I was a young man. I work at a mine and sorting coal. The only room we rent are in old house, but not even pigs should live there. There are only other Chinese men there, huh? We cannot have our wife. The government will not allow our women to immigrate. In the evening, some men gamble. I do not do that. I do not gamble. I need to save money because I still owe money for my travel and the head tax. You know, head tax? Canada is not what it boasted, you see. I struggled to get here to Canada, expecting great opportunity. But there are only a few that get those opportunities. At that time, there were a lot of white men out of work and they very angry. Then the politician would start to come and say, immigrants are the reason why you don't have a job. The white men get even more angry. They all carry signs to big rally. A white Canada and no cheap Oriental labor. As if I want to earn less than the white people do.
Western coal miners voted on a new contract, negotiated by the United Mine Workers of America, District 18. Many of them lived in overcrowded canvas tents, infested with bedbugs. The contract was supposed to address those living conditions and establish an 8-hour workday. But Alberta workers felt the union had accepted weak conditions based on their U.S. settlements. They rejected the agreement and walked out. The UMWA, the mine owners, and the provincial government met together, then insisted on a return to work based on the rejected contract.
For 15 years I work in the mines. After strike, I cannot get job anymore in these mines. We have many leaders. I am one. So now I am under discrimination. I have to get a job in town at packing plant. Packinghouse is not a good place to work. If they do not like you, like me, maybe I ask too many questions. You work in the rendering room.
I also work at the packing plant with Alex in Lendering. We hate this job called drying blood. Once it's dry, we take powder out of roaster. After about 10 minutes, the whole room just full with dust, blood dust. All the time you are breathing this. For 2 days after that, you spit and choke and cough blood. Oh.
Groups like the Militant Industrial Workers of the World were successfully organizing direct actions around the country. Robert Borden's answer was to blame the unrest on alien agitators. His government issued Privy Council Order No. 2384. This declared illegal 14 so-called radical organizations, including the IWW. Many were groups founded by enemy aliens, Ukrainians, Italians, Finns. Their newspapers were banned, and they were forbidden to hold meetings in languages other than English.
We want to organize. First problem, government makes organization illegal. We even cannot hold meeting in Ukrainian. Back in mines, we have mine workers union. But here in Packinghouse, we have nothing. Most unions do not accept non-whites for members, like me, or Italian. There was the Wobblies, the IWW. They take you, but government makes them illegal too. But just now they formed this one big union. It stands for the same thing as Wobblies.
In union halls across Alberta, workers voted on joining the One Big Union.
If you are a wage worker, you are welcome in our halls, no matter what your color.
The OBU is not a white man's union, not a black man's union, not a red or yellow man's union, but a working man's union. All of the working class in one big union. So I go to other Galicians. We decide what we need from company. Then I go to Chinese. They stand with us back in mines during strike. Second problem, I take demands to company. I get fired. Maybe worse, I am already on government lists from the strike. These days they arrest us aliens. Some go to internment camps. Others they send back to Ukraine. So we figure next step is to talk to returned soldiers. They just now hired in plant. At first, I'm not sure if these soldiers talk to me. All you hear these days is how immigrants are to blame for everything. We cause Spanish flu. We commit all crimes. We take jobs from Canadians. But they want to talk. I find out that they are paid less than us aliens. That never happens in mine. It is always white workers at the coalface. Us non-whites, we move the coal back to surface. Chinese sort, up top. You see, farther from the face you work, the pay it will go down. So the soldiers agree to go to company. All them. They get laid off.
Responding to the strike wave of 1918, the Borden government appointed a Royal Commission. It spent 2 days in Calgary, then traveled to Edmonton.
People say I should go. I speak enough English to understand. So I go, but I do not much like what I hear. This Anglican minister starts talking. He is local secretary for the Labour Party. I do not know him. That is not my church.
Are the returning men asked to work along with the Chinese?
They are asked to work side by side with the aliens of all descriptions and are offered 32.5 cents as against 35 cents to the alien.
Then all is clear. Company does not want to hire these soldiers. But they cannot say this. They know soon. Soldiers, they will demand more pay, better conditions. So they make it so that these soldiers do not want to stay at plant. Then they go happily back to exploiting us.
We're on St. George's Island. The Labour Choir has started to sing. The sun is shining. The Union banners are bright against the blue sky. Now there's a group over there, under that banner of the Women's Labour League.
I'm an operator working for Alberta government telephones, so I'm everyone's information source. Bachelors ring central and ask for cooking and household tips, and the occasional date. New mothers ask about childcare. People ask me to call them back at a certain time to be woken up from a nap, to meet a train, or to take a cake from the oven. And we give out hockey scores.
I'm an organizer for the Women's Labour League, and my husband's a tradesman with a union. But last year, during the strike by hotel and restaurant workers, I saw that us women have our own issues.
After 6 long weeks on the picket line, hotel and restaurant workers went back with a good settlement. Members of the Calgary Labour Council had supported them in their demands for better pay and changes in the working conditions. For instance, many owners required that their employees actually live in the restaurant.
Girls were required to sleep right on the premises. Here were the men's quarters, and here were the women's quarters down in the basement, side by side. We have a minimum wage in connection with the Factory Act, $9 a week. And what do we find? We find that certain corporations in this city are employing girls for even less than that, $7 a week. We find the Young Women's Christian Association charges $7 a week board. You tell me how that girl lives. I believe that a great many of the evils that predominate today will be done away with if our girls only had a living wage, not minimum wage, a living wage, one that should be determined on the normal cost of living and an allowance for some of life's little comforts. People are not going to stand this much longer. Workers are done with being starved to live and living to starve.
At AGT, accepting a marriage proposal is the same thing as handing in a letter of resignation. Oh, you'll have someone to take care of you now. And they set our rates of pay on the same mistaken idea. Guys in our office doing wiring and maintenance earn almost twice as much as we do. I'm not saying the men should be paid less. 2 years ago, over 100 plant men walked off their jobs. It started in Calgary and then spread all across Alberta. They stayed out 3 weeks, and they won a decent wage increase. The difference to us was they had a union. A union! That's what we need here for the operators.
The largest group of workers here in the park are from Division 4 of the Railway Employees Department at the American Federation of Labor.
I'm a machinist. I work steady at the Ogden CPR shops. That makes me pretty lucky. These days, with all the men coming back from the war, there's a lot of unemployment around. Still, I don't have seniority. So some days, when I show up, there's no work. I just have to take my tools back home, and I don't get paid that day. That's the main thing. Insecurity of existence. Take a person who has a steady occupation. He's getting so little of what he produces, he doesn't have anything saved up. He has nothing for sickness or life insurance, nothing for the day when the crash comes, which every worker knows is surely coming. Or take my position. I got the flu and was laid off for a couple of weeks. That meant I went $50 behind, so it'll probably be 2 or 3 years before I can catch up.
1,200 men from the Ogden Shops walked out in support of the plant's freight handlers.
You see, last April the division goes into negotiations with the CPR. Eventually they offer parity with the US. We reject that out of hand. They got a rotten contract down there. So our leaders threaten a nationwide rail strike. That's when the American Federation of Labor steps in and they order us to accept the original offer. Well, people are none too happy about going back to work. Sure enough, soon there's trouble. The company targets some freight handlers, and they all walk out. I mean, they're just demanding the same wages we've got. So, everyone else in the shops heads out the door with them. At that point, the federal government brings the hammer down. They pass an order which bans all strikes everywhere. Well, a threat to one is a threat to all. So, the Labor Council votes in favor of a general strike. Within a week, the civic employees, street railway workers, Teamsters, all join us on the streets. Pretty soon, Ottawa puts pressure on the CPR, and they settle with those freight handlers. Shows you what happens when you get a little bit militant.
Last year they won a pay rise at the shops. Immediately the landlord upped the rent. Then the dairymen put an extra charge on milk and butter, the main things our children live on. The working people had to pay the price of the war, and the millionaires made the profits. We've so many different social lines drawn. If my child is starving and I go on the corner with a tin cup and beg for a little to buy bread, I'm arrested as a vagrant. Another woman can stand on that corner wearing expensive furs, boots costing $20 and a corsage bouquet, and she can collect nickels for some petty little scheme, and she's commended for that. We find it practically impossible to clothe our children and give them the education we feel they should have. I myself have taken my 2 eldest boys from school and put them to work simply because I could not keep them at school out of my husband's earnings. I've had to keep my oldest girl at home from school as well. A very bright girl. The worker coming home sees his children underclothed. He dresses them up as best he can, and across the road he sees people in the heights of luxury, driving around in limousines.
For justice thunders condemnation. There's a better world at birth.
There's some parts of this job I love. The other day, I got to deliver triplets. But I also know that not every child is wanted or can be afforded. Now, only recently in the daily paper a notice appeared asking for someone to adopt a child, yet to be born. This woman already had 4 children, and she could not face the world with the 5th. Now, if we were to teach this woman the fundamental laws of nature, we would be breaking the law. Well, birth control is a crime, if you're poor. But the well-to-do woman who says she can only do justice to 2 or 3 children is commended for her intelligent outlook. So I'm campaigning to get free public health programs for everyone. I've met a number of labor men who have the same goal.
The Alberta Federation of Labor Annual Convention passed a number of radical resolutions.
We ask for the nationalization of the medical and nursing professions.
One little girl got into trouble, and her baby was born 3 months after she was married. That baby was only 4 pounds, because the girl was almost starved to death. That little girl's baby died on the 14th of this month. Who is responsible? That millionaire who pays her a pittance is responsible. And if they ask us, are you in favour of a bloody revolution? Why, any kind of revolution would be better than current conditions.
I think what the working men want today is truly democratic control of industry, production for use and not for profit. Some people talk of evolution and some revolution. In Calgary, evolution means doing nothing, and revolution means doing something.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Back in my father's time, they were fighting for the 8-hour day. Their slogan was 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what you will. But many are working here every day for 12 hours. No wonder the working man's yard is not turned into a garden. No wonder his children hardly know their own father. This is an existence, but not a life. It is the heartless grind of thousands of men who begin to work when they should be in school and keep it up until they are broken down, old men.
Over 200 delegates at the Western Labour Conference called for the 6-hour day, and they called for
The immediate organization of workers along industrial lines.
the creation of the One Big Union.
Just last month, the metal trades got together and started demanding the work week be reduced from 48 to 44 hours. They were locked out, along with their brothers in Toronto and Winnipeg. That's what kicked it all off. May 15th, Winnipeg goes out.
35,000 Winnipeg workers go out on a general strike. They support the right of the building and metal trades craftsmen to bargain together. Workers' newspapers across the country run reports of the latest developments.
Have you been following the Western Labour News? It was such a thrill when the telephone operators were the first workers to walk out in Winnipeg last month. Not just walk out, but they pulled all the fuses on their equipment. That way, they couldn't be replaced. So, a couple of weeks ago, the Manitoba government threatened to fire all the operators if they didn't go back to work. Well, I just read that 10,000 returned soldiers marched on the legislature, demanding the government withdraw its ultimatum. I try to picture that. 10,000 soldiers marching down the Winnipeg streets, showing their solidarity with the workers, with women, and the government back down.
When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun.
On first day of Sympathy Strike, we make sign, no alien but the capitalist. And when the sun comes up, we walk downtown.
When we go to Market Square, I never see so many people in one place all my time in Canada. Then, a thing I did not expect. A crowd of Chinese men. Yeah, I ran over there. I was so happy to see them. They say, oh, they work in the laundries. I did not know there were other Chinese people here who were also wobblies too.
For thousands of years, the labor man has been working at a great disadvantage, and he is now suddenly woken up. For myself, I vote for the 6-hour day, but that is only one step towards the better day that is dawning.
And there were some good speakers. The working class and the employing class have nothing in common. I knew the words. There can be no peace so long as hunger and want are found among millions of the working people.
Between these two classes, a struggle must go on until the workers of the world organize as a class, take possession of the means of production, abolish the wage system, and live in harmony with the earth.